All right, we'll start with the polls in just a couple of minutes.
Recording in progress.
All right, we still have 1 minute. So for the short questions that some of you asked during the time that you were watching the videos, so there will be pre-recorded material that you can choose to watch in advance, or you can choose to watch during the allocated time in the session. But today's session is an exception in the sense that it's the largest amount of pre-recorded material that you will ever have to watch. So normally it will be about 30-40 minutes of pre-recorded material, and then we start with the live part. So there's an introduction part of 5 minutes, about 30 to 40 minutes for the pre-recorded videos, and then live part. And for repeaters, so as I already said, basically exam is worth twice as much as the midterm. So midterm score times 1/3 plus exam score times 2/3 is the calculation for the final grade. And I assume that the question for Christopher's was also answered just now with the question. It will be also, like, there will be less time for the video, so you will have more time overall. There will be more time for you to take a break as well. All right, let's start with the polls and then get back to your questions. Okay. So the first set of questions, just to make sure that we're on the same page, you were looking at the value proposition and saw that you have to think about it from the standpoint of different parties, from the company standpoint, customer standpoint, and collaborator standpoint. So just to make sure that what you can kind of have a rough idea of what how they look. Here's a poll. These are examples of statements for value proposition from a company that produces carpenter equipment. So take a look at these three and indicate which party, which value, for which party each of the value propositions is more likely to be tailored. So let's take a minute to make your decisions. This is not a trick question, just to make sure we're on the same page. Okay, let's have another 30 seconds and then we'll wrap up. So if you're in doubt, submit your best guess so that we can see the overall distribution. All right, for the undecided, 5 more seconds, and then we stop the poll. So then you'll just have to see what the other guys have answered. Okay, let's see. Well, first of all, well done. The overall distribution is quite well. The most popular responses are indeed in line with the correct responses. But again, here it's the best guess, assuming that it's one company formulating these 3 offerings. For the first statement, someone who answered that it's customers. Can you explain why you thought this is the best guess? So from those of you who picked option number 2 for the first question, can somebody explain it maybe why you thought it's the best one here? You can use the mic.
Because of the statement, quality commitment unparalleled in the power tools industry. Yeah, so it's consumers that are more likely to be, the carpenters are more likely to be concerned about that, about quality. So, that's good. So most of the time, it's something that we'll talk about the we'll tell about some specific needs, some specific concern of the customer, and also if you have to formulate your value propositions in the coming tutorials or in the exam, also think from the consumer standpoint, what is it that the consumer would value in your offering? And so things like quality, price to quality ratio, things like that, they would be of greatest value for them. For those who said that it's collaborators for the second statement, what hinted you that it's the collaborators? And for which collaborators do you think this is the value statement for? For what type of collaborator?
I believe that the word supported helped me make my decision. It was supported by a large promotional budget, which means it had backing and help, which means collaboration.
Yeah. So which collaborator? What type of collaborator for the equipment manufacturer did you have in mind when you thought that thought about this statement? Which party is that? There can be different ones, right? Like partners in supplying raw materials, helping you with research and development, partners helping you with distribution, warehousing.
With probably distribution and promotions.
Yeah, so these are the most likely it's the stores, right? The distributions when they provide the physical space, but also they, well, if you see Albert Heijn, for example, they run often the promotions also, and promotional budget, it's usually something that the manufacturer can offer. They can say that we'll have an arrangement so that you also benefit from the in-store promotions. All right, and for the last one, vast majority picked the correct option. Well done. Actually, it's the one with the highest correct response rate. Here you see that, well, you're talking in terms of what's the money that the company can make, what are the margins. Obviously, you're not worried about you don't know enough actually about the customers' baseline margins, like they're carpenters, they also are in the business of making money, or your distributors. So it's just also less likely that you can appeal to these very specific numbers in their statements. You know the most about the company, and you have to talk the most in terms of increasing the market share or increasing the profitability, increasing the revenues. So that's why this is the option for the third statement, that this is a company value proposition. All right, so well done. And now for the next poll. This one is quicker. So you read about the value proposition that you have to create it for the market. There's also this idea of the optimal value proposition. What is it? All right, 10 more seconds to submit your best guesses. And done. Okay. All right, let's see the results. So here the majority picked the option maximum consumer benefits at minimum costs. This is not the correct option. The correct option is none of the above. Those of you who picked none of the above, can you explain why it's none of the above?
Well, because the third option, it's maximum customer benefits at minimum cost, and minimum cost makes sense from the perspective of the company value and the collaborator value, because they might want minimum costs, but it might also be that they want something else, not necessarily minimum costs. So just simply the statement that the optimal value is this proposition, well, it can be seen as false because it needs to be somewhere in between of what all sides want, actually, and we don't know what specifically it is.
All right. Can somebody remembers from the material what's the kind of where the optimal value proposition lies?
I would also like to add that it's also about the benefits of the collaborators and of the company itself, and not just of the customers.
Yeah,
and
so
also the customers might not value the minimum cost. So if it's, for example, a high-end customer, the cost might not be connected to the benefit.
Yeah, so we need to think about, in general, you need to think about more parties than it's just specified in this question. You need to think also very much about your collaborators, about the company. So if it's at minimum cost for the company, maybe that's a good thing. But at the same time, if for collaborators, for instance, if you talk about your distribution partner, this can be something that, again, let's go back to the example of Albert Heijn. If it's something that cannibalizes on that directly competes with their private labels, there's no collaborator value for your product. So you'll either have to sacrifice your margins very much to convince them to give you a lot of shelf space, to give you, favorable enough shelf space so that your product is actually seen, located by the consumers, right? And so just not factoring in this collaborator value is not allowing you to develop the truly optimal value proposition. So when you think about try to create one or are asked what it is, always remember that it's not only about delivering something for your consumers and trying to create minimum cost for the company. And same thing, going back to competition cannibalization, if it already competes with the product that the company offers, it's also a problem. So the correct answer would be this, actually, it's not related to any of these. It's something that allows the company value, collaborator value, and customer value to overlap. So this sweet spot, the red triangle on your slides. All right. And now let's go to your last question for today. Okay. So we discussed goals, and already there were already some questions about them. One of the critical distinctions that you have to make when deciding on your goals, when setting your goals, is the short and the long term, the setting of the short and the long term goals. So think back about that material, and in this question, try to answer what type of company this scenario, what type of product this scenario would fit best. let's give it another 20 seconds for you to submit your votes. It's still have a few more votes to be submitted. All right, let's, it's a very close call in this case, so let's just see where the majority, by a small margin is. So most of you thought that it's a result of incremental and small scale innovation. It's in this scenario, it's less likely that the company will have very different goals for your earnings in year 1 versus your earnings in year 10. This is the most fitting option here. Ideally you would want more information, but in this kind of stylized scenario, what's important to think about is this idea that for some of the products, you just need consumers to be more prepared. You need more explanation, more. You have a more of a learning curve for consumers to start adopting the product. So it's more natural for some of these for products that require this type of adjustment from the market to have much more modest goals in the short term compared to what you would have in the long term. And so this would be the case for CSR initiatives because, you need, first of all, it's something that's still relatively new and you need to educate consumers. You need to change the mindset, sometimes change the broader context. So that takes time. But the same thing for radical innovation is just something that's much less familiar to your consumers. So it's more normal for these earnings for that type of innovation to be much more substantial in the long term compared to the short term. For incremental innovation, think about products like, an added blade to a Gillette razor. It's more expected that your earnings will just remain more stable, that what you make in year 1, what you make in year 10, it will be similar, if not maybe just already declining because of the market saturation. All right, so we'll wrap up with this and then move on to the questions that you submitted for the chat. Okay. So there was a question about the earnings, the return on investment, and the role of earnings. So first of all, in the case of Tesla, let's also remember that we're not talking about the same. Also, in the case of Tesla, what's important to remember is the long-term orientation. In the case of any type of more radical innovation, more radically new product introduced to the market, we will have a lot more long-term perspective. So when Tony is saying that in the 10 years you still haven't made the profit, well, in most cases, these type of companies will also have accounted for that and will be factoring in that you are expected to make positive return on investment and making profit, not in year 1, not in year 2, 5, probably by year 10. As for the idea that return on investment is not important for companies that invest heavily, well, that's more of a controversial point, I would say. Saying that the company is not in the business of making money would then mean that the company can't attract any investors. So a company that relies on people, designating their funds to its development, of course, it means that the company needs to have those goals in mind and that accountability that there has to be on the assets that it has acquired thanks to the stock market investing in it. It has produced after a reasonable time that was given to it. It has produced some payoff. And the contrast with Gillette was just meant to illustrate that for some companies, you will have more, first of all, more variability in the returns and more substantial investments. So for these type of companies, it's relatively more important to think about the returns on investments compared to and they will be changing more over time compared to companies that have much smaller investments. At least if we talk about the new product development. All right. you do want to maximize the collaboration value. That was, I guess, a comment on the polling question. Let's talk about, we're not talking about maximizing profit and ROI, we talk about setting measurable goals in terms of those and paying attention to those. Again, it's in relative terms, and we're not trying to claim here that a single metric is the most important metric. But saying that making money off of your investment is not important if you're a startup, maybe in year 1 and year 2, you can survive with that, but at the end of the day, you're relying, especially if you're a larger company and don't have family money, and not an Albert Heijn family heir, then probably you will have to set goals and and talk in terms of the return on investment for your business. All right. So a question about the book edition. I don't think there are substantial differences, but make sure that all the chapters that are the chapter numbers, they correspond to the chapter topic. So in case there is a confusion, then you can just consult someone who has the same edition. Harriet, you said you missed the answer to the last question, but I'm not sure what that question is. The groups have to consist of 5 people, and that, yes, thank you, Maura, it's already answered. The competitor value for optional value proposition, I would say it's not really as important. It's not something that you should be worried about, but you do need to think about, well, the kind of this point where your company has value to offer to your customers. It implies that your collaborators, your competitors, you have to factor them in when thinking about optimal value proposition, because you have something unique to offer to your consumers, given that your competition is not offering something identical, right? So we do not formulate the value for competition, but we have to think about what is it that they already give to the market, so that you can articulate your unique value proposition for your customers in terms that allow you to differentiate yourself from the competition. So yes, there is time for the videos and time for the Q&A. The one thing that will vary is the duration of, and will be different from today, is the duration of time to watch the videos, because this kind of content that is more abstract with examples will be a bit smaller, and there will be more time for you to kind of work on mini questions, mini examples, and discuss them in the class. Yes, so you will have about 30 to 40 minutes to watch the pre-recorded videos. Thanks so much. So for those of you who are stressing out about the assignment, there are tutorials that basically take you step by step through the different things that you have to do. Essentially, the one example that, well, you can't use it, it's from an article that's outdated. Back in the day, Radiohead launched an album, and it was allowing people to pay as much as they want for the download. And this gave rise to this discussion: is the pay what you want practice even a viable tactic? It's covered in the pricing lecture, and it's covered also in many academic articles. A theoretical essay that would be about that would say, okay, there is this new phenomenon, it's covered in this news article. And what it exemplifies is this new tactic of price setting. So there is literature, and there's literature that discusses it, the benefits, why do companies, when does it work better, why do companies adopt this in the academic article. So your goal in the essay is to link this practical phenomenon that occurred to insights from empirical research that's created in the marketing as an academic discipline. All right. So physical context, it implies basically the the environment, so like environmental trends and things like that. That would be the more of the physical content, like the natural resources that you can rely on. So these type of things. In the context of, let's see, I guess this would be the best, like changing climate, changes in the landscape, the geography of the market where you operate. All of those relate to the physical aspect of the broader context that the company operates in. The distribution of cities within the country. Are there a few hubs, or there are smaller cities that are spread out? All of that would be examples of the physical setting. So for slides that have company examples, we'll not be spelling this out but so it's just also not it's not practical to write down what are the differences between Tesla and Gillette, for example, because that's already spelled out in the video. So you can there will be more variation in slides in the coming lectures, but there is as much text as is necessary to follow what the given slide is about. Yes, so the videos will be pre-recorded and posted in advance. They will be posted normally the day before, so on Monday, and if possible even earlier, but not so. On Monday, you will have access to those links. So if you want to watch something in advance, that's also possible. All right. All right. Any questions that I missed? Now is a good time to bring those up again. Sorry, we ran a little bit over time. Okay. There was all right. Just one more time for those of you who are repeaters. Some of you have been asking the same question. Tutorials are not mandatory. Attend the tutorials that are non-assignment tutorials because it helps in the exam questions. So that's the main takeaway for that. For those of you who were wondering about scheduling conflicts, if in case you can't come to a lecture, we do post, well, you can see that we'll post the Q&A, we do post the pre-recorded material. So it will be available in case you have a scheduling conflict. All right. I'm not sure I understand the question. It was about the group choice. So can you please elaborate, Martin?
When looking at the groups, I noticed that I found it maybe you have to work together with a certain team. So let's say you're IBA 1 or IBA 2, you have to work to you have to find your group members from team 1 or 2, or is it just unlimited?
Oh, all right. Okay, that's it's just that we need to give teams a number. So your team will have, so the first number, when you assign yourselves to teams, it says like tutorial 1 and then 2, right? Group, like a group, team 1 and then 2. First number is your tutorial group number. So that corresponds to also a specific time slot in your schedule. Second one is just an order number of your team. So you can be, if you are in a team 1 and then 2, you work only with people in tutorial group 1, and your team number is 2. That's needed because then we'll have a lottery later and assign, like have teams decide on team order based on those numbers. So the second number is just kind of the name of your team in every tutorial group. Is that clear? You don't have to work with other teams, with other tutorial groups,
And what happens, like there were certain criteria. So let's say 2 nationalities I saw, I think.
Yes.
And man and woman have to be combined into one team. What happens if you have a group that's from before? Because there's no real interaction with the students at the moment. There's only online. So what happens if I myself have a group from previous courses that I want to work together with? So we already have those two nationalities, but we don't have the criteria where we have boys and girls. So
you have a nice boys club. Well, then we'll have to move someone. But there is a chance that there will be an additional person, like there will be a sixth person. There is a slight chance. If not, then we'll gender diversity is also, it's a requirement. So one of you will have to separate from the mothership for one course and have one team assignment where they'll work. So maybe you can have like decide who you are willing to part with the most, or just have a lottery. This is the course requirement.
Okay, thank you.
You have to work with people in your tutorial group. Yes, correct. So, all right. Okay. So if you don't have any remaining questions, something pops up in mind that's really critical to find out before the next week's session, then please post that on the discussion board. We'll open it up in a few minutes. For next week, the structure is similar. The volume of the pre-recorded material is smaller. So to give you, if you want to know for sure, then you just sum up the total duration of the videos on Canvas that are posted in advance, and then you know when the Q&A starts. But we'll also have an introduction every week when we'll once again articulate that and set the stage for the next, for the whole session. And so next week we discuss targeting and segmentation. Based both on the book and on the pre-recorded materials. You'll work a little bit in randomly assigned breakout rooms and again answer the polls. So thank you all for your participation. I know it's an unusual format, but it's really nice that you're still engaged. So well done, and see you guys next week.